I'm another person that's been really a beneficiary of Cecily's help, so this is a little bit long. And like Jimmy Buffett said, it's a mostly true, semi-partially true story. And it's called Club-Footed Frankenstein. It was a Thursday when Drill Sergeant Bellotta came to me and said that he was going to make Hatcher, that was Robert Hatcher, my problem, mine, all mine. Teach him to march straight, just straighten up in general. Bellotta was not so straight himself. He looked like a sack of potatoes poured into fatigues and bent his head at an odd angle so that it looked like he had some kind of a twitch when saluting. I tried to avoid the only other guy in our platoon from Texas. Hey, 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 Hatcher would say, following me like a freakish puppy dog. Let's show these guys how Texans are. I wasn't sure how that was supposed to be, but for me, it wasn't like Hatcher was. You're now friends with Hatcher, Bellotta said, his face screwing up like it did whenever he wasn't cursing. You're both from Texas. Get him straightened out. He marches like a club-footed Frankenstein. You're now bunkmates. Meet your new best friend. We were in month 2 of a 3-month training regimen. I would be spending half my remaining time in basic training with the one person I most strenuously avoided. My complaints about Texas being a big place and having no idea who or really what Hatcher was went unheeded. I tried to highlight our differences at every level, from cellular to cultural, all to the delight of Drill Sergeant Bellotta, who only said, "Yep, you've got some work to do. Need to get him marching straight, then everything else." Hey, 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 buddy, Hatcher mumbled in an East Texas sort of way later that day, sending shivers up my spine. We'll have a few beers when this is all done. Maybe you'll come out to the house and we'll get good and snockered. Giving me a vision of waking up at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house with Hatcher playing Leatherface. Hatcher's favorite song was Mr. Turnkey by Zager and Evans, possibly the creepiest sophomore pop song ever. I'll have to think about that. We're all in basic training. Most of us, the 2nd platoon, were to finish our training and then be assigned to an Army unit. A few people were National Guardsmen, which meant that after the basic training, they would return home to serve on weekends or when called out for local emergencies. There was a sort of hierarchy, and Hatcher, being a National Guardsman, was already at the bottom of it. Drawing the drill sergeant's attention and ire only made it worse. I felt the ire by association every time Hatcher got out of step or said something dumb or worse. Hatcher was mine when the drill sergeant caught him asleep under the bunk with his fingers intertwined in the springs that supported our thin mattresses so that his arms were up and it looked like he was doing something. I wasn't sure what exactly. Mine when he and Brown came out of the gang latrine, a big shared bathroom area with matching bruises and no more respect for one another than before they went in. It wasn't all bad. He was mine when he bought all the beers at our first break. Of course, he was mine when I had to help him back to the barracks, throwing up on every corner. He was mine when he got the angriest reaction I ever saw out of Bellotta by winking salaciously at the only woman in our view, the supply clerk, Specialist Smith. Hey, 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 Hatcher said to Specialist Smith, in a way I never wanted to hear it say it again. I think he might be sweet on that little thing, was perhaps the most perceptive thing I heard Hatcher say. She's a soldier, man. We don't need any more trouble from Bellotta. Oddly, Bellotta, who never seemed to know much about us, also intervened when Hatcher and Little Caesar got involved in a verbal spat over the same Specialist Smith. Little Caesar was the nickname Prometheus Blake carried with him from some New York City borough, which I didn't understand since I didn't know what a borough was back then. He was the 2nd shortest person in our platoon and as close to a nemesis as any of the troops not from New York City could have in such closely monitored conditions. He was quick to offend and never did not have something to say. He seemed to insert grumpiness into every situation. Little Caesar was unlike anyone I'd met up to that point in my life and had a different, combative, rule-defying outlook on life that I did not understand. I didn't know New York or any such city, and I sure didn't understand what Little Caesar was always mad about. But he'd make a good drill sergeant one day, I thought. One afternoon, we were supposed to be studying, sitting on our butts in the hallway. I don't know who started it, but they quickly moved from saying something about Smith to hollering at each other. Little Caesar was quick-witted and sharp in chewing out Hatcher, who could only shout, "Nuh-uh," and "You're stupid," back at him. Bellotta overheard them, his ears attuned to any mention of the pretty supply clerk, and stepped up to the pair. "What are you two nimrods arguing about?" I think he knew perfectly well. "Get these cards in order and shut up about anything else." Of course, this only caused them to snicker and move on to whispering about the only other thing they might have had in common, their love of gin. So it was that I grew concerned one evening when I realized Hatcher was not in our squad bay studying like the rest of us. He wasn't underneath the bunk, and a quick interrogation established that the others hadn't seen him in long enough that I started to worry. Mostly about my own skin and standing once Hatcher did whatever the heck he was up to, and as always, got caught. Hatcher joined the Army only after his 5th or 6th civilian job disappeared. His last job was at the Piggly Wiggly. He managed to ride a long set of grocery carts through the parking lot and straight into the plate glass front of the store. It did enough damage that the store had to close for 3 days to replace all the pieces. I wandered down the hallway looking for Hatcher. Our floor, 2nd Platoon's floor, was on the 3rd floor of the barracks building. This was initially confusing since we painted 2s on every door, corner, bulletin board, and flat surface in the place. Anyone arriving at the top of the 3rd floor staircase would have been hard put to know where they were, except that it was only the troops of 2nd Platoon that had any need to go there. As basic trainees, though, the barracks was for edification, not gratification, according to Drill Sergeant Bellotta. For his glorification, we whispered behind his back, very, very quietly. One side of the hallway was lined with doors to offices, closets, and the latrine. We spent an inordinate amount of time in the latrine, cleaning, complaining, commiserating, but not showering. Those were timed affairs. You had only 3 minutes to shower each day. This was tough on Hatcher, who often showed up ready to shower with a shaving cream bikini and laundry soap in his hands. "Good enough for the uniform, good enough for me," he'd say. "It's a long story," I told Bellotta when he asked why Hatcher always smelled funny. Our 4 squad bays or rooms lined the other side of the hallway. They were large rooms with half-wall dividers that had held 8 to 12 troops, depending on how they were arranged. There were bunk beds and large standing wardrobes known as wall lockers for each troop. We slept on metal bunks, 2 bed frames stacked on top of each other and joined by metal tubes. We polished the asphalt tile every day until it had a mirror-smooth finish. We used the small commercial floor buffer and cut-up piece of the coarse wool blankets we were given to sleep in. Sometimes there would be a dull spot, and somebody would put their foot on the buffing head to give it a little extra weight. Except for Hatcher, he tried to sit on it, causing the brush to grip the floor, pulling the bucking device out of the hands of the troop, trying to control it, and slamming its former rider against the wall before impacting itself, leaving a visible dent. We were assigned to the 1st squad bay, but with Hatcher missing, I began to look in the others. 2nd and 3rd squad doors were open, and I could see the soldiers in there studying like we should have been. No Hatcher there. But the 4th door, the door to 4th squad, was closed. I could hear Little Caesar behind it, though, hollering about something and talking in the rhythmic poetry he called rap. "Have you never heard of Fatback?" he asked incredulously once. "Idiots." Of course the door was closed because we weren't supposed to close them. Little Caesar did everything we weren't supposed to. Snuck out and got caught by the MPs. Bought a radio at the post exchange on our first trip out. Got caught by the drill sergeant on the bus back. Put the radio away, but tried to play it one weekend. While we cleaned or polished something, got caught by the drill. Brown was assigned to watch over Little Caesar, much like I was assigned to chase after Hatcher. Little Caesar was New York through and through, just like Hatcher was East Texas through and through. 2 magnets could not have been more opposite, but apparently the desire for gin and juice was enough to set aside any cultural war or good sense to get a couple of bottles. They decided that one of them should crawl out of the barracks, sneak to the store, bring the bottles back, and re-enter the barracks without getting caught. The holes in their plan were many, especially since we were on the 3rd floor. But it appeared Brown and the rest of 4th Squad found the possibility entertaining enough to watch. So in the squad's room at the end of the hallway, in a plan worthy of a Tom and Jerry cartoon, they tied bed sheets together using our just learned knot tying skills. They looped one end around a metal bunk where the 2 beds joined and fashioned the other into a sort of harness around Hatcher. Although not one of us had tried it at this point, our heads were full of images of helicopter assaults and tough men rappelling into combat, sliding down a rope to land like a superhero and engage the hapless enemy with our fabulously quick and accurate weaponry. Only later would some of us realize that the definition of hapless might be sliding down a rope into a mass of armed enemies with our weapons on our back while our hands were busy trying to keep us from falling to our deaths. As it was, Hatcher and Little Caesar were wrapping their way into en belay, en rappel, just as I arrived. There were no locks on our doors since they were so rarely closed, but the door to Fourth Squad was closed and didn't budge when I tried to enter. "Hey," I shouted and pushed hard, opening just enough to get my foot inside. Then the person holding it gave up and it flew open with a startling bang. I slid inside on the polished floor. Bursting into the brightly lit room from the dim hallway, I had only a moment to realize what was happening. A taut rope of sheets ran from the bunk closest to the door, past the center of the room, where Little Caesar was crouching in a tug-of-war position, and to the diaper-like crude harness fashioned around Hatcher, who was all but 1 foot out the tall and wide windows and standing on the third-story ledge. 4 or 5 others from the room had been holding the bunk by pushing it against the wall. The suddenness of my entry surprised that crew, and they all let go at the same time. I had just a flash of anger, thinking this was even worse than when Hatcher tripped with his weapon and bayonet, which stuck 3 inches into the soft asphalt, while throwing him forward to topple our entire squad like misstacked dominoes. And then Hatcher was off the ledge. At the same time his bulk pulled on the sheet rope, Little Caesar was pulled straight upright from his crouch, losing his grip, and the bunk, no longer held by anyone, flew across the room under Hatcher's weight. They say that as one falls to one's expected death, one's life passes in front of one's eyes. You relive it all in a rush. Lives might not have been in danger that night, may have been in danger that night, but not mine, and yet I still relived a show of sorts. Not a show featuring my life, but my time with Hatcher. I sort of had an epiphany in the split second the bunk screamed across the polished floor. Hatcher went off the ledge in a physics-defying arc as the soldiers stepped back and the bunk let loose. It scooped up Little Caesar, who didn't quite let go of the sheets until the bunk hit him hard and knocked him out the window head first. His hands stretched in front of him like Superman. But he dropped down the side of the building while Hatcher let out a blood-curdling whoop. Hatcher swung out and away from the building, and as the bunk slammed the wall next to the windows, he swung back in just in time to punt the falling Little Caesar straight into the parallel windows on the first floor, Hatcher falling feet first in behind him. Time slowed, and in the replay in my mind, I saw my past with Hatcher in a new light. I realized Hatcher had ridden the buffer trying to buff out a spot I made spilling polish one night. His wink as he managed to stay in front of the dented wall during the inspection let me know he had my back. He had not fallen asleep with his hand stuck under my bunk, but had been straightening the sheets before inspection. Hatcher, Little Caesar, and I had all tangled, but it was Hatcher who volunteered to change squad bays and take the bunk over mine so I did not have to. A dozen different times Hatcher got into trouble, played in front of my frozen eyes as I realized just how much he looked out for me. That reverie ended as Little Caesar and Hatcher entered the first floor drill sergeant's office in an explosion of glass and wood as they collided, sliding across the desk perched inside under the window, the momentum carrying them into the center of the room in an amazingly uninjured pile of idiotic manhood to land at Drill Sergeant Blada's boots and pants beneath his hairy bare leg and Specialist Smith's screaming form. Whatever they had been doing alone in the office was interrupted by Hatcher and Little Caesar's arrival and a shower of glass and splinters. "What the choked Blada as the pair cut his feet from underneath him and he landed on top of them. Smith grabbed some item of clothing and fled screaming in an athletic move, the door slamming behind her. 2 floors up, I shouted at Brown to turn out the lights, but the gig was up. The sheet still tied around Hatcher led unerringly up to our room full of scared stupidry. That was a blotter word that I now fully understood. Miraculously, no one was badly hurt. I think in the end I got hollered at more than anyone and put on more than a little KP. The kitchen police detail where you washed pans and had to empty that nasty slop bucket into the bigger one. I didn't care though. I knew that Smith's presence in the room with Blotta ensured that any punishment we might receive would not come to the attention of higher authorities. The window would be replaced and you could get extra cookies on KP. We did graduate from basic training. I was happy that my friend Hatcher was not hurt and lived to return to his hometown, undoubtedly becoming a great National Guardsman. Somehow, Drill Sergeant Blotta felt it appropriate to present me a leadership award when we graduated. I learned to pay a little more attention to the next goddamn club-footed marcher with a heart of gold that I would be assigned to. That carried me far in the service. Over the next couple of years, I was promoted and moved several times. It only dawned on me in retrospect what we'd gotten away with. When my soldiers would do something dumb, I'd remember the Hatcher incident with a smile. And it was about that time, a few years later, when the platoon sergeant called and said he had a new, old sergeant who needed some serious mentoring. And could I meet him in the office? New? Old? What the heck does that even mean, I thought. He's new to the Army, but spent some time in the National Guard. He's a Texan like you. I could only cringe and maybe smile at the hey, 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 hooting through the phone speaker. Meet your new best friend.